gentlemen, my name is Ed Seagar. On behalf of the Rampo Ridge HSO, I'd like to welcome you to the Board of Education Candidates Forum. A couple of ground rules for tonight. I'm going to read a very brief introduction of each of the candidates. They were asked, they prepared it themselves. Anyone who's played golf with me knows I like to move things along, so they will be very brief, number one. Then we'll go to the questions. The candidates have been given some questions that were prepared by the HSO leadership. We're going to go through those questions first. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and then we're going to go to some audience questions. Patty and Leslie have cards if you want to ask a question. Raise your hand, they'll bring you a card, and you can write down your question, and we will get started. Our first Board of Education candidate, and I've got them in reverse order, so I apologize, Mr. Peter Windrikowitz. Did I have that correct?
Excellent.
Thank you. Mr. Windrikowitz has been a Board of Education member for 23 years, as I understand it. 27 years, congratulations. Very active in the Bergen County and the New Jersey School Board Association. Very active at Immaculate Conception Church, is a member of the Mahwah Youth Sports Boosters, and also supports the Mahwah Marine Moms, and is a graduate of King's College in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And since I'm a University of Scranton graduate, I will not hold that against you.
You're a Jebby.
Second candidate is Kim Barron. Mrs. Barron, is that correct? Has been a Mahwah resident since 2008. She has a very large family, which I will not try to go through. She's a volunteer with the Mahwah Community Emergency Response Team and the Mahwah Schools Foundation. And this is her first time running for elective office, although she did serve once with Congressman Scott Garrett, and she was his boss. Rick Da Silva is with us. Rick is running for his first full term on the Board of Education, so he finished a partial term he was elected to. He is a graduate of Clemson University. He owns Liberty Subaru in Emerson, and he and his wife have lived in Mahwah for 15 years. Our last candidate is John Denise. John has lived in Mahwah for 25 years. He's active with the Mahwah Youth Sports League as a football, baseball, and basketball coach. I think you coached football with me, John, as a matter of fact. That was a lot of fun. And John is attended both Montana State and William Patterson University and has a degree in environmental sciences. So those are our candidates. Nice round of applause for them. So we put the candidates in order, the order they're going to answer the questions. Are they going to answer every question in this order?
No.
No.
The first question is going to start with Mr. Windrikowitz and work down. The second question will start with Mrs. Barron, and so on. So each candidate has an opportunity to answer 2 questions first.
So our first question tonight is, what do you see as the board's roles and responsibilities?
As you are with your golf, I'm also going to ask you to be very succinct and to the point. You won't have to ring any bells or hold any signs up. The question is, what do you see as your role, the board's role and responsibilities? And the shorter answer is this. The school board has a dual role: to represent the concerns of the citizens, taxpayers, and parents to the school administrators, and to represent the needs of the students in the school district to the citizens, taxpayers, and parents of the community. The school board does not operate the district on a day-to-day basis, and that's important. That we do not have to micromanage the district in its operation. It is the job of the superintendent, who is the district's chief executive. The school board sets the policy, goals, and objectives for the district, and it holds the superintendent responsible for implementing the policies and achieving those goals. And I'm very, very we're looking for careful about being a board member. Before I became a board member 27 years ago, I attended board meetings for 18 months to get a feel of what was happening on the Board of Education. And it's important that you know what you're coming into when you become a Board of Education member. I'm on a task force with New Jersey school boards that are setting up training protocols for new board members. so they know exactly what they're getting into, how they are to act in public, and how they are to act in private. So I'm very protective, I guess the words of board members. Oh my gosh, you had to use it. So we don't micromanage. We depend on our superintendent to hire the best administrators and present them to the board and the teachers also of the highest quality. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Ramapo Ridge HSO for sponsoring the event and giving us this wonderful opportunity to introduce ourselves and express our opinions and concerns. And thank you, Leslie, Patty, Leslie, again, Leslie number 2, or however you want to go by, and for Ed Sitar for playing the role of moderator for this evening's event. I see the board's role and responsibilities as one of making important decisions and establishing a vision for Mahwah schools. The board must be the backbone of a strong organization, an organization that oversees our school district and supports the superintendent and administrators so they can manage the schools. An organization that enables our teachers to teach effectively and our students to learn exceptionally well. The board is also a representative of our schools and the community at large, and they are the community's first impression of our school system. Thank you.
Well, for the roles and responsibilities, in my opinion, Trish Shada kind of puts it best when she says that the role is not to run the district, but to make sure that the district is well run. From my standpoint, it's really making sure that the policies that govern how things are run are in compliance with constantly changing state mandates. That's a tough thing because that is it's kind of a moving target. Once they figure out what they what the state wants to do, they quickly change their mind and screw us all up. To make sure that the regulations that go along with those policies are well written and provide a clear picture of how the policies are going to be interpreted and enforced, basically so that everyone knows what's expected of them, whether that's the students, the teachers, the parents. Everybody around needs to know what's expected. Most importantly, to make sure that any district money and resources are used in the most efficient, fiscally responsible manner as possible. Like I said before, the board doesn't run the district, the superintendent and her team do. And the cool thing about the team that we have, to be honest, I think they are the best and brightest out there. They do make it easy for us to kind of stay out of their way. I mean, one of the big responsibilities for us lately is just to stay out of their way and not slow them down, because we really do have a great team running the district right now.
The roles and responsibilities for the Board of Education trustees, I believe, is to set policy that the superintendent is responsible for implementing. Also to ensure adequate funding, spend taxpayers' money prudently, and probably most importantly, be the liaison between the community and the school officials. I think that last one is very important because, as you know, we're not going to build a sports facility, and we have a large sum of money currently in the capital reserve account. At the October 8th meeting, the superintendent outlined the process for bringing the capital reserve projects before the Board of Education for consideration. And as she explained, it would be a threefold process. First is to have discussions with the facility committee. The second is discussions with the administrators. And the third is the ideas from the community. And that's very encouraging because it's a departure from past practice. But what the superintendent did is she added a caveat to that. And she gave us 2 ways that that's going to be accomplished. And that's through contact with the facilities committee and also by attending the public Board of Education meetings. I would actually like to see a community advisory committee formed in order to look at that money and for the community to have a larger input on where that money should be spent. Thank you.
We've got a few people come in. If you have a question you want the candidates to answer, if you'd raise your hand, Leslie or Patty will bring you a card. Our second question tonight is, with 1 or 2 meetings a month, all school boards are limited in what they can do. How should the board decide what is most important?
The school boards are limited in what they can accomplish due to, as Rick stated, state regulations. So the time isn't really part of the question. And the Mahwah School Board runs very efficiently by working as a board of committees. So I think anything can be accomplished through the hard work of these committees, especially because they can meet as often as they would like. Therefore, having 1 or 2 meetings a month doesn't limit the capabilities of the board. The committee chairs have to accurately report and discuss their findings to the board so that the board and the community will be properly informed. And as far as how the board should decide what's most important, I believe it's a decision that should be based in a democratic process. I would hope the issues that affect students academically and the needs of all students, regardless of their abilities and backgrounds, would be the top priority. Thank you.
Yeah, kind of like Kim said, to my knowledge, there's never been a time when something didn't make the agenda because there wasn't enough time. It's kind of a commitment that we make, once we're elected to a board, that you're there until the business is done. And if there's a lot of business before the board, the meeting's going to be a little bit longer. But as Kim explained, we are a committee of, or a board of committees, and there are lots and lots of meetings that happen in between, in between our regular board meetings. So it's deciding what's most important to be on the agenda really isn't so much of an issue.
Yeah, I don't really see it as an issue either. I mean, there's enough time for us to discuss everything. But as far as order of priority, we should always talk about safety first, the safety of our children. And next after that is the education concerns. And then if there's time left, we can talk about extracurricular activities and sports. But I've been to a lot of the meetings. I've always felt that there was always enough time to cover everything that was important.
School boards generally operate in one of 2 modes. Committee of the whole, where everything is handled in a workshop. Then the following meeting would be the actual action meeting where votes were taken on things discussed, if they were ready to be discussed. The Mahwah Board of Education has had the Committee of the Whole. It has a tendency to slow things down, though, because you get into conversations that have board meetings going till 2 in the morning. You have to carry over to another work session to finish the work you're trying to get done. We currently use the committee system, and it works very well. The committee consists of less than a majority of the board. They meet, as Rick said, at various times between the meetings. They do present to the General Board of Education, of course the public is there, what was discussed. They're not official minutes, they're just what had been discussed, what items we talked about. This is a more efficient way of operating because we're able to keep things moving along. Board members are always encouraged to call either other board members, committee chairman, or the superintendent or various superintendent to get information between, clarification between meetings. Not to discuss business, but to get clarification, say on a bill list. And that's it. We use the committee system and it works very well in Mahwah.
Next question, with all the competing demands on our lives, do you have sufficient time to devote to this position, particularly when key decisions need to be voted upon?
Okay, well, the short answer is yes. I think everybody up here, I don't think we'd be sitting up here if we didn't think we had time to, to devote to being elected to this board. I happen to be pretty lucky that my schedule is flexible enough that when I was appointed to the board, I changed all my manager's schedules, and now I have Wednesday nights off, so that's convenient for me for when we have Wednesday night meetings. My schedule is flexible enough that, yeah, I'm pretty much here on a rare occasion. I'm out of town, I think, in almost 2 years. I think I've missed 2 meetings. Both times I'm out of town, once in Washington DC, I think the other time was in Washington State. So it was a little tough to get here for meetings. But other than that, yeah, not an issue.
I have 3 kids, 12 and under, so I've gotten to be quite good at juggling responsibilities. My wife and I, we employ the divide and conquer method. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. She brings one kid one place, and I bring another kid another place, and she picks up one kid from another place. So we work it out that way. As far as attending the meetings, I've coached youth sports for many years, hardly ever miss a game or practice. As a matter of fact, I was just at the soccer practice tonight, and I got back about an hour ago. So when I commit to something, I'm all in. I take my responsibilities very seriously, and I try to make every single meeting that I can.
My short answer is, I'm retired. I really, as an educator in the beginning, I really felt that I had something to bring to the table. I've been a school librarian for 39 years. I was able after those 39 years to gain some information, some knowledge of what goes on behind the scenes, and was able to say, wait a minute, I don't think that's the correct answer. Maybe we could do something this way or that way. I had 7 kids go through this system, 7 children, and because of this system, they were all successful, and I'm thankful for that. And I feel that I'm giving back something to the community by being here. As far as time constraints, again, I'm retired. I have my own schedule, and all our board members read those board packs, and we have questions, we call and get clarification, or at the meeting, we raise our hand and ask for clarification. And if it doesn't meet our needs, in some cases, we've tabled it. So we'll discuss it further. So, that's it.
Well, first, I want to thank you so much for this question because it's the easiest question I'm getting this evening, and I'll give you the shortest answer. I have 3 stepsons, first of all, are out of the school system. They're all grown. 2 of them have gone through the whole Mahwah school system. They're graduates of that system. And I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have a 14-year-old son who's currently a freshman in the at Mahwah High School. And I have a husband who's very supportive of my desire to run for the Board of Education. So that pretty much sums it all up. As you moms all know, if you got a kid that's old enough to take care of himself, make his own dinner, do those things, you're good to go. So thank you.
Our next question, what motivates you to want to be a member of the Board of Education? The meeting is going to 2 o'clock, probably not that.
Well, most of all, it's because I care deeply about public education. I'd like to have a positive influence on our children's lives. I think when I first announced I was running as a candidate, some people that know me were probably pretty surprised by that, because I'm a person of very few words. And when people ask me, well, why is that? I said, well, that's because I'm too busy listening. And I think, to be a trustee, you have to have that ability to be a good listener and to take whatever the community is telling you and bringing it with you to these meetings so that you could bring it to the rest of the board, some of these concerns that you're hearing out in the community.
Again, a short answer, because I care about the kids in town. I've watched this district grow educationally over the years, and I'm proud to have been a part of that. So that's my short answer. I really love that the kids are succeeding. This year alone, this graduating class, or between 2012 and 2014, we had 6 acceptances to Ivy League schools. Back when I first came on the board, that didn't happen. They weren't going to those schools. They were going to local schools, and at the time, these local schools were just starting off, and they didn't have that great a reputation. So the short answer is, I really love working with these kids and watching this district grow.
So what motivates me to be a member of the Board of Education? I want to preface that question with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, which was, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And I decided to run for the Board of Education first because I have a 14-year-old son in the Mahwah school system, a freshman at Mahwah High School. And I'm concerned with the rapid changes that are occurring within our educational system, and the need for open lines of communication with the community, and the lack of participation with the community and our Board of Education. I'd like to see that strengthened. And I believe in my heart now is the time when I can be the change. And my agenda is to bring a new set of eyes to the Board of Education so that they get a fresh perspective on different things that are occurring in our town and our school system.
So I'm going to throw out a quote too from Thomas Jefferson. It says, "We in America do not have a government by the majority, we have a government by the majority who participate." And this is something that I choose to participate in. What motivates me is my kids in my town. I have 3 daughters. Our oldest is in 4th grade at Joyce Kilmer, and our twins are in 2nd grade at Betsy Ross. So I have a vested interest going forward for a good long time in what happens in the school district. I have no axe to grind and I have no agenda. That's important because it's easy to be objective when you don't have, there's not one thing that you're trying to accomplish, because there are a lot of moving parts, and really, being focused on one thing sometimes is not as productive as it could be. I bring to the table an open mind and a unique perspective. Obviously, I'm a parent with kids in the district. I'm a homeowner and a taxpayer in Mahwah. We all are. But in addition to the Subaru store that Ed mentioned earlier, my family owns the Hyundai store down on Route 17 in Mahwah. And what that means is I get the distinction of paying taxes twice in this town. So I'm definitely aware of when taxes change and taxes go up, and that I'm definitely aware of the effect that has on homeowners and businesses in town. I'm also a product of the Mahwah School District. I started my career here in Ms. Brotherton's class in kindergarten at Commodore Perry, and I graduated in 1993 from Mahwah High School. A lot of the teachers that I looked up to when I was going through the district are still here, so there's a connection there that I feel strongly about. And it really boils down to me wanting to do my part to make sure that the kids that graduate from this district are as well prepared for life beyond high school as I was when I graduated. That's the upshot.
Our next question, what are the current challenges facing education and school boards?
One of the most serious things that is occurring in New Jersey is the case of home rule. Boards of education in the state of New Jersey are having difficulties with the legislators in Trenton. One of the reasons I'm active in New Jersey school boards is because we're advocating to lessen the challenges of home rule. Now, home rule means they're mandating programs, but they're not putting behind it any cash to back it up. They're setting up caps, 2% caps, and at the same time they're adding more and more mandates that we have to fund or find ways to fund those programs. So, working on a statewide level to avoid home rule is one of my biggest challenges. And quite successfully, we've been doing very well. It's getting so that the legislators now ask New Jersey School Board for their input, whereas before they never did. They just went ahead and did things. Thank you.
As Pete just said, there have always been mandates, and they're mostly unfunded, coming down from the state and federal government. And as the public schools require more public dollars to run, the board has to abide by the mandates or risk losing funding or not gaining new funds. Each district has to move very fast to implement the new mandates, which require time, money, and staffing. And as the board district never is stagnant, they always have to try to play catch up. So it's a really catch-22 situation that they're involved in. I also believe we are at a very important crossroad in education. The questions surrounding standards, increased testing, student privacy, and school choice are a few of the issues facing parents, students, teachers, and administrators. We must work together to unearth the best solutions to these issues and others in order to create a preeminent environment for all students to thrive and flourish while fostering a love of learning.
I get to follow that, huh? So I sort of a common theme here. I think we're probably going to all be on the same page with, as far as the costs to run the district. Unfunded mandates, just the cost of what things cost, for instance, healthcare. You're all aware that our budget can grow by 2% each year. There are exceptions to that, but we'll stick to the 2% thing. Healthcare this year for our teachers, the cost went up, I believe, by 12%. You know, even taking into account that our teachers now contribute up to 35% of the cost of that health insurance. It still is in excess of 2%. That's just one thing on the budget. There are a lot of line items on a budget that are really, really big that increase at a rate greater than 2%. So I think up to this point, we've really done a good job of keeping right at the 2% budget increase. As time goes on and those expenses continue to increase at a trajectory greater than what the budget's going to increase, that's going to be more and more difficult to do. So in my opinion, you know, locally, that's going to be our biggest challenge going forward.
I also had mandates on my list, both state and federal, including the requirements of Common Core. Most of these mandates are unfunded, so we're being asked to do more with less. Funding is always a challenge, so we need to be more creative in funding our schools by looking at alternative revenue streams, such as grants, either private or public. Another big challenge is incorporating technology into our schools. We need to start replacing textbooks with iPads or other electronic devices. Distance learning classrooms with video networking technology could be used to expand our curriculum offerings. And these type of technologies need to be explored so our kids can have a broad range of subjects to which to choose from.
Our next question, what kind of relationship should a district board have with its community? How do you propose this be achieved?
Okay, in one of my previous answers, I stated that the board is a representative of our school system to the community at large, and they are the community's first impression. So one of my reasons for becoming candidate for the board was the fact that it appeared to me the community was basically unaware of the sports facility and the fact that the board had amassed a large amount of money in the capital reserve account. I felt very strongly, no matter what side you were on regarding these issues, one had to question the fact that the community appeared to be in the dark, as witnessed by their response and their position in attending board meetings in large numbers to express their concerns and dismay. I did not like to witness, nor do I believe either the board or the community wants to have an adversarial relationship with one another. But it did appear to be a huge, unwarranted lack of communication. According to the Great Schools website, one of the bullet points listed under "How can I tell if my school board is doing a good job?" in the subheading, "Does the board understand the community?" They answer this question with the following: "One of the most difficult parts of school governance is creating a strong relationship with the public. An effective board knows and respects its community and encourages the community's trust in its school system." I would like to propose that the board create succinct meeting minutes that would be disseminated to our community in order to keep them better informed. And if elected, I do hope that there will be an opportunity for me to become a liaison from the board to the community.
I think the relationship between the district and the board, or district or board and the community, really the key is engagement. My first year and a half on the board, the meetings were attended by 4 or 5 people, always a reporter and a couple of representatives from the school HSOs, and that was about it. I can't fault people for that, because if you look at our agenda, it's hardly exciting. There's a lot of, looking at line item transfers and improving field trips and that type of thing. So it's hard for people to really get engaged and really to wrap their arms around it and really something that they want to be part of. I think if we give the community more of a reason to come out, we get more engagement. For instance, in the last couple of meetings, there have been presentations by our department heads, our director of curriculum, Ms. Zimmerman, basically putting out there all the innovative, really great things that are happening in our classrooms every day that frankly we don't talk about enough. I think we can do a better job of letting people know that we're going to do, have those presentations and drumming up some participation to get some people out. And we've fielded some pretty good feedback from some people in town on how we might be able to do that. I think going forward, you're probably going to see a lot more of that. Trying to make the meetings a little more interesting and engaging, and hopefully better publication when we're going to have those types of presentations. So when people come out, you don't feel like it's, you're sitting there watching us vote on some things that really aren't all that interesting. To, like I said, give people a reason to come out and participate.
This is the area that I'm most concerned with. When I attend these meetings, I get the sense that everything has been discussed beforehand. There's never any open debate, there's never any discussion. And it seems to me that these meetings are like a formality where it's just to memorialize what was already discussed. Now, I want to take that discussion from behind closed doors and bring it out into the open and bring it to the public so that we could all participate in discussions. I want to give an example from a neighboring community so you can compare it to our situation. In Glen Rock, this past summer, they were thinking about installing lights at the Glen Rock High School football field. They had two public forums. And I'll read you what it says here in this article. Since raising the possibility in June, trustees called for a proactive effort to solicit public opinion, both in general and in particular with respect to residents in the immediate area. In authorizing the forum, they reiterated the focused sessions that should be fully devoted to the subject, rather than limiting discussion to formal Board of Ed meetings alongside of other business. The board president goes on to say that, I think we should first put this in the public domain so that the residents who are for or opposed to it can reach out to any and all of us. I think this is community outreach that's done right.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with your statement. The board is prohibited by the Sunshine Law from discussing anything out of the public's venue. We can't do it. And with Oprah rules, that things that were discussed in public are available for the public's consumption, as Mrs. Schlagauer knows. But what we need, and we're working towards, a stronger transparency in public relations with the community through the use of the newsletter. It's back again. It's in color, and it's catching the eyes of people. MCN is available to them to use if they wish to have an event highlighted. Programs such as Art and Music Night, off-site presentations of new programs, the report card, the new standards-based report card. I've been to everyone except one, and I've enjoyed watching the different age group parents of different children, and the questions they raise regarding the standard-based report cards. We make an attempt to get out there and tell them what we're doing. In the old days, the only time the Board of Education came out to your HSO when it was time for a budget vote, all of a sudden 9 members appeared at your school. Who were they? I have been to a number of the HSO meetings, and I enjoy it. I can take the heat, but most of them are very nice and have good ideas that they try to give to me to take back to the board. Events calendar, that's something within the last 3 years we've been putting out there for the community. Maintaining good relations with the municipal leaders, the library. The librarians, the parents can't say enough nice things of our children's librarian because he works with the school and the teachers to develop our collection up there and tie it into Common Core standards. We work with the youth support groups. They're the biggest users of our facilities past our children.
Time.
Thank you. I lied, I guess I went too long.
Very tough. Very tough. Our next question. What do you see as the greatest strength and the biggest weakness of the Mahwah BoE schools? And what do you think needs to be done to overcome those weaknesses without compromising the strengths?
I think the greatest strength of our district, in short, is our people. The teachers and the principals, the supervisors, the central office staff, the paraprofessionals, the people that are in the classrooms with our kids every day, in my opinion, are the best and brightest out there. The people are really the determining factor in any organization that determines success or failure, and I think our school district is a really great example of that. You can have the best curriculum, the best policies, over-the-top facilities, the whole nine. If you don't have the right people there, it doesn't really mean anything. So, you know, really really and truly, the people are our greatest strength. It's tough to come up with something that I really characterize as a weakness for our district. Obviously, there are always opportunities for improvement. I would like to see us adopt technology a little more quickly, recognizing that it is difficult. It's not the most fiscally responsible thing to do to, you know, kind of check out the newest, coolest, most sexy piece of equipment and say, you know what, let's go buy a couple and see where we go with it. Not probably the best way to spend the public's money. On the flip side, you know, by the time you look at it, you identify it, you decide, you know, what could we do with this? You study it, how would we use it in the classroom, what would we do with it? You decide to buy it, you budget for it, you go out, you get it. By the time it hits the classroom, you're 4 generations behind. So I think there's got to be sort of a happy medium, and I'd like to see, you know, adoption of technology happen a little more quickly.
As far as the strengths and the weaknesses, I'll start with the weaknesses. The two weaknesses are transparency and community inclusion. I already spoke about community inclusion, so I'll just say something briefly about transparency. I was surprised to learn that there's no minutes taken at these committee meetings. It doesn't take much to sit around and take some notes about what went on. I go to meetings probably about 10 or 15 of them a week, and I've never been to a meeting in my 25 years working where there was never minutes taken. I'm also surprised that at the public meeting that there's committee reports being given, and yet they're never reflected in the minutes. So I'd like to see that take place. As far as our strengths, it's our teachers, plain and simple. Our teachers and the people who work with our children. I think this board does this district and this board does a great job with HIV. I'm not talking about individual cases because that's private. I'm talking overall, the Respect Week and Rachel's Challenge and the Ryan Halligan story and the advisory groups. You can't walk through one of our schools without seeing respect and diversity. There's a bulletin on one of the schools where the kids are signing that they'll never bully, and if they see bullying, that they'll do something about it. I think that's something that we should all be very proud of.
Again, respectfully, I'll challenge you on what you just said. Regarding bullying, we're guided or restricted by law as to how a bullying incident is handled. There's a strict timeline. The children, they just had I can't remember the title they used this past 2 weeks ago, they had a Be Kind to One Another week. The board, every meeting, wherever we go into executive session to discuss the HIV or non-HIV items that were brought up, because under the law, that's allowed to be discussed in private session. We have a very strong program of HIV. Myself, I have seen that, or sat through that presentation 3 separate times, and there are 3-hour presentations. So as far as the HIV, Mahwah is right on target and right according to the law. I'm extremely, as Rick said, I'm extremely proud of our administration, the faculty, the support staff, and our student body. Blue Ribbon School, Betsy Ross. Reward School this year, that was 2012. Reward School at both George Washington and Betsy Ross this year. They were 2 of 10 schools of Bergen County that received that recognition from the state. That's a big deal. Scholarship awards. $15 million this year given to the seniors, or offered to seniors graduating from Mahwah High School. College acceptances, I mentioned that earlier. We're getting not only the Ivy League, my Wesleyan University, my favorite, Middletown, Connecticut, that's where I'm from, but other schools like Boston University, Boston College. You can go on and on. It's a prestigious list. And if you get a hold of the profile, it tells you the different schools that we went to. Excellent choices for the kids. As far as our weaknesses, I wouldn't call it a weakness. I'd call it a work in progress, where we are taking and making the effort to appear at HSO, HSA meetings. Thank you. Did it again.
Well, I think our greatest strengths is that we have excellent, educated, and experienced staff and administration. And their efforts are reflected not only in test scores, but in the amount of students succeeding in their endeavors and going off to college. Last year, 94.2% of our graduates went off to college. And our average SAT score was 1185. Those standardized test scores are not just part of the barometers of student achievement. This data and other data on our students helps us to see our weaknesses. For instance, I learned recently that one of our schools wasn't doing well in the area of English language arts several years ago. And Mahwah set its goals to improve this. They mapped out a vision, they hired coaches for the teachers, and they raised the scores. So that's an indication of how well our school system can work as a group. Also, we have a very safe learning environment and dedicated and active parents. And all studies show that these kinds of parents produce more engaged students. So I think the biggest weakness is, again, as a lot of people have mentioned up here, is the technology infrastructure. We need to make sure that our students have access to computers when needed, and we should also look into other technology initiatives. We should look at what other pioneering districts have done to see what their technology initiatives have increased student achievement. And we also need to continually update our buildings for safety, security, and efficiency.
As a reminder, if you want to ask a question, Patty or Leslie have the cards, please raise your hand. Our next question, what do you think is the most important educational improvement the Mahwah school system needs within the next 3 years, and how would you implement it?
The most important improvement would probably be to embrace technology. It seems like our surrounding school districts are so far ahead of us in this area. While we were debating the merits of the sports complex, Ridgewood and Ramsey were issuing laptops and iPads for their students. And this is something that is important to us because we're a very diverse community. We have economically disadvantaged people in our community, and I know a lot of us, as far as my household, we probably have like 5 computers, but it's not true of all families. And that's why it's important that the school provides these computers so that disadvantaged people have them, and also that everybody's on the same page as far as the technology, that they have computers that are up to date and are the best technology that we could get for them.
The challenge to Mahwah in the next 3 years is to ensure that our children succeed with the new Common Core and Park standards. It's important. It's 2 years ago, I attended a meeting in Warren County where the business types got up and said, guys, you're not doing a great job for our kids. They're coming into us, they can't add. They can't take care of their own personal finances. Colleges are spending more time, as well as business, having remedial courses coming in for math and for English courses. That's not what college is all about. You have to hit the ground running when you get there. You're at a new level. But what's happening, not so much in Mahwah, because our kids, as we pointed out throughout the evening, are succeeding. There was a sheet of percentages I had, and of course it's in here somewhere, where it showed, oh, here it is. 74 find recent graduates on a national scale deficient in writing. 54 recent graduates found deficient in mathematics. 38 recent graduates deficient in reading comprehension. This is what businesses are coming back to us saying. This came from the 21st Century Skills and, of course, the Chamber of Commerce. This is not made up. There are many schools out there, and I worked in summer, and I heard a guy said to me, what is this kid? He just graduated from high school. He doesn't run a credit card check. That's scary. Mahwah is ahead of schools in Bergen and Passaic County in getting ready to implement Common Core standards. I'm very proud of that fact. I've gone to meetings where I've had people in Passaic County stand up saying, no, we're not ready. We need another year. Well, our school district has had programs for our teachers, workshops. The teachers are ready to hit the ground running and to benefit our students. Thank you.
I think the most important educational improvement the Mahwah school system needs within the next 3 years, again, would be technology. I think we have to decide if we're going to go virtual with textbooks or continue to purchase books. And we also need to balance the costs of the needs and prioritize. I too had attended some Board of Ed meetings in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and they've given Chromebooks to all their students. So we are behind in that aspect of technology. We must also need to fund programs for the neediest children, those children with special needs. I know that there's always a decision whether to educate the children within our district or to build programs and send them to private schools, and that can be very costly, but that's something that we really need to look at. And I also see the need for more science, technology, engineering, and math, which is better known as STEM, programs and classes, because we're being told that in the new century, the children are going to have to be well versed in these areas of science, technology, engineering, and math. So I think that we need to get on the ball as far as that's concerned.
I'm going to answer a little differently. I think I can come up with something that sounds great in front of a crowd. But if I'm going to be honest about it, I think the people that are qualified to answer that question are not anybody that you're looking at right now. It's our teachers that are the ones that are qualified to answer the question, what do we need? They're in the classroom every day. You know, if they're going to look at it and tell us, like, this is what I've seen, we'd like to have this is what we need, here's where we're short. They're really the ones that are qualified to answer that question. To be honest, I hope that that's something, you know, in the near future and hopefully in another full term, that's something that I get to learn from those people. Anything that I come up here really is arbitrary because I'm not in the classroom every day. Like I said, I come up with something that sounds good, but the teachers are really the people that need to answer that question.
Okay, our first question from the audience. What will this district look like in 10 years? What is your vision of how you will accomplish this?
Tomorrow, I'm leaving tomorrow morning early for a workshop down in Atlantic City. It's an annual affair, and there are a couple of very good programs that I'm looking forward to see. On Tuesday, the final report of Safe and Secure Schools. On Wednesday, Special Education, a service, not a place. In addition, they have a presentation on 21st century schools. And that's what Mahwah and schools are going to look like in the 21st century. You're not going to see rows of classrooms. You're going to see classrooms with various configurations. The curriculum will be entirely different from what you see today. You may even see days where a block of kids will be at home, learning from their houses. Now, someone mentioned the idea of, was my wife over there, mentioned the idea of distance learning. We tried that. 13 years ago, we're the only place in Bergen County that had distance learning. You know what happened? Nobody had the same schedule we did, so we couldn't use it. We had one school district come into our district to learn Latin because they couldn't afford a Latin teacher, and we had one, and they used our Latin facility. District learning works when schedules work. If you can get a schedule that matches each other, it's fine. But when they don't match, it's of no use to anyone. So you'll probably see a lot of at-home work from the students and the teachers. And if you ask me this on Friday, I may have better answers for you. But right now, the 21st century is not anything we're used to now. You're not going to see the classroom as set up. You won't see teachers on the platform. You'll see kids challenging each other and being challenged by the teacher to come up with an answer. And being able to work in various groupings. That's what business wants. They want you to be able to come in here and work with a group. Because if you don't work with, if you're not a company, a team player, you're of no value. End time. I'm getting a record here. Sorry.
What will it look like in 10 years from now? I hope that we will still have teachers, and we won't have just computers. I'd like to incorporate technology, I'd like to see it incorporated into our schools, but we still need to have a human element. There's a lot of things coming down the pike with Common Core that is tying teachers' hands and not allowing them to teach specifically to the students. So that's something that I'm concerned about, and I hope that in 10 years from now we've got that all worked out and we can all coexist. I do see a lot of technology, a lot of children learning more about business, learning more about, as they do in Finland. I was just reading a study in Finland where they have stopped most of their standardized testing. They give one large standardized test at the end of high school. They've done away with all the rest of the standardized testing. And they ask the students questions, too, about world questions, psychology questions, science questions, math questions, business questions, questions about technology, to see if they've created well-rounded students and citizens for the next century. So that's what I hope to see in 10 years.
Kind of along those same lines, I hope that we kind of get back to what it was like when I was a kid. The teachers, when I was younger, they did what they loved, the way they loved to do it. There were some subjects that teachers loved to do, and they were really good at it. Another teacher might teach, the same 3rd or 4th grade class completely differently because they really had a love for something different. Trying to get people to be teachers for the love of doing it is, with more and more invasive mandates from the state and federal government, it's going to become tough. And I really hope, kind of sounds bad, but I hope that we get to the point with all the standardized testing that finally we kind of look at it and say, you know what, wow, just enough is enough. We're asking a whole lot of questions, and what are we learning? We're really not learning anything other than, okay, this kid can take a test. You're not really learning and finding out what they truly understand. So I really hope 10 years from now, my twins will be seniors in high school, and hopefully my oldest will be a sophomore in college somewhere. And I really hope, as they're going out into the world, that their, kind of their thoughts and memories of here were not of taking the test, but really participating and being active and engaged and inspired by their teachers.
Well, I agree. We're cramming too much in. We're spreading ourselves way too thin. We're not doing specialized focusing and spending enough time on our core subjects. So, we have to get away from all of this standardized testing and all these requirements. And, it's tough to do because that's what the federal government and the state government is forcing on us. So that's the challenge that the teachers have, and they're stressed. There's too much for them to teach in a short amount of time. So You know, that's something that we all have to advocate to our representatives in Washington and Trenton. And hopefully they'll hear us.
Our next audience question: would you support a currently enrolled Mahwah High School junior or senior student to be appointed to the board annually? What do you think could be the value of their presence on the board?
That's a great question, whoever posed that question. I think it would be a great value to the board personally. I think that students are on the front lines in our classrooms. And I think that they would be able to give, as we were talking before, to ask, as Rick had said, about asking teachers first about what they need, being able to see what the student needs, let them tell us what they need in the classroom. And we can also be discussing it with the teachers as well, but I think that's a great opportunity for children too, students that wouldn't even be children, they would be young adults, excuse me, but for them to be involved in politics as well, the politics of our civic government. And I think that's a great opportunity for students. So I think it's a good thing. And I think it also would be a good opportunity too if we could get either students in high school to do the videotaping of the meetings instead of the swap hours having to videotape all the time, and possibly let them earn credits towards whatever courses they may be involved with.
Yeah, I don't think that'd be a bad idea. I mean, we see kids coming in for extra credit to come and watch the meetings, and see kind of how things happen, and to have somebody actually be able to participate and be part of. Sure, I mean, it would certainly shed a new light on some of the conversations that we have, and you know, some of the committees that that they might be able to participate in. And again, being on the front lines, I mean, there's technology. I'm 39 years old. There's technology now that my kids are like, I'm looking at this stuff and I don't even get it. And I like to think I'm a pretty technically savvy kind of person. But to have a student who, talking to friends, family, cousins elsewhere in other school districts, and what are they doing, what might be cool, I see some merit to that, sure.
I love the idea. I mean, that's why we're all here, is to, for their sake, and they should have a say at the table. I mean, they know what's going on in their schools, and they know the good things and the bad things. So, yeah, having them would be helpful to all of us. We need to ask them these questions on this is your school, this is where you live for 6 hours a day. So how can we make it better for you? I think that would be a great idea.
Okay. There are school districts that currently have student liaisons to the board. I'm in favor of that, it's fine. But as being a full member of the board, that can never work. Why? Well, we go into executive session and we discuss teacher salaries, or in some cases, teachers. They've been rushed and they know they're being spoken about, but it's not a place for a student to be. As a liaison, to have a place in the agenda, that's fine. That's not a problem. But there are areas of the board that are private. And then we would get ourselves into lawsuits if we had students come into our executive session as we discuss a good or bad teacher. So as a liaison and in the action meeting, yes, fine. To report how things are at the school, what kids think of us, that's fine. But to sit and follow us into executive session, or even to have a vote, that's not fine. We were put on the Board of Education by you people. You voted us. You trust us to do what we think is best for the students in this community. They just can't be appointed to something, be a voting member of the board. I have no problem with a liaison, a student liaison. I think it's a great idea, but not a voting member and not one who will follow us through all the avenues that the board has to go through.
Tonight's format is for every candidate to answer the same question. So there's a question that's directed to one candidate that I'm going to paraphrase, so every candidate has a chance to answer it. No personal insult, please. The sports complex. how do we determine that we needed it? Do we need it?
Lucky me. Okay, so how do we determine that we need it? What I was pointing to the board, this was definitely something that was predates me. As I understand the process, it goes from the school, the principals, to the superintendent, sort of. They find out, look, what do we need? What are we looking for? And this was one of the things that kind of made the conversation. Again, it kind of predates me, so it's difficult for me to answer that question. As far as do we need it? You know what? There are a lot of different opinions, one way or another, on that, and a lot of passionate opinions on both sides. There are also a lot of people who really didn't have a strong opinion one way or the other. In my opinion, when I was in high school, I was not a star athlete. I was not a star student. I was an okay student, and I was a pretty good athlete. But what I learned from my participation in sports is how to get along with other people, how to interact with other people. You know, you're sitting in a classroom all day long. There's only so much you learn socially. Sports had a big part of my social development, so there was a lot of value to me there. I believe that a well-rounded student is not necessarily just a straight A student or, you know, a varsity letter student. You know, was it last year? 137 students are in the Minds and Motions for last year. That's high school honor roll and varsity letter. That's a well-rounded student, and every chance we get to help them get out of the house, participate, be physical, go do things, I think is of value.
As far as need, I don't believe that need was ever demonstrated. I mean, we saw a presentation about basketball, and the presentation talked about you know, a sport that this complex wouldn't even accommodate. This complex had a turf field to it. So I didn't see any value of that whole presentation. It was like comparing apples to oranges. As far as the way that whole thing went down, it's as if it fell from the sky. I mean, nobody in the community ever heard about it until it was in the newspaper. It was never discussed openly, or there was any dialogue or conversation. So here we were as parents for several years seeing different types of programs cut, all in the name of budget restraints. And we as parents, we understood that because, you know, we were getting less funding from the state and, you know, the money's tight. And then all of a sudden, this thing comes out of nowhere. And we're like, well, where did this money come from? And that's the thing that really bothered a lot of people.
Without trying to sound flippant, we should be merited. Respectfully disagree. I don't like to be called a thing. This discussion began when over 3 years ago, it was brought to our attention by the coaches and the athletic director that we needed a facility for inclement weather, if the athletes would come inside and work out, the marching band wouldn't have their tubas rusting or whatever. I'm being flippant, I apologize. And the twirlers. For 3 years, we discussed this in committee, not in the board. And then all of a sudden, an idea came up that there was money available, capital reserve account. Before I go further on that, there's nothing secret about that. At the end of the year, the board is given a resolution. Last year, I think it was to transfer $400,000 into capital reserve in open meeting, in public meeting. Those who were there saw and knew what was happening. Nothing secret. So, the need, as professed by the staff, was for a building of this type. The people who were doing the selling of refreshments needed a new facility. They were tired of working underneath the stands with water running from a hose. The ticket takers needed someplace to go. We worked off of what we were hearing from the staff and the people who worked different games. It wasn't something we pulled out of the air. It was. So and every meeting of the Board of Education after we had as chairman of the committee, we gave a full report to the board and the public who was in the audience. We didn't have to. It wasn't official minutes, but it was pretty close to what we discussed. And it was never secretive. It was brought out in July, brought to the board in July of 2013. Thank you.
Okay. The athletic facility. First of all, I don't believe there were ever any field study analysis done to determine whether we needed any more fields or any new places for the children to practice. Secondly, I've attended town council meetings when we were redoing our master plan, and the demographics of the students who would have been using such a facility has been steadily going down for the past 10 years. So I don't know how this idea that we needed a facility like this came to be. The parents can't attend all the meetings, so as Peter said, they talked about it at meetings, and parents have busy schedules, and you can't all come to the meetings. So that's where, again, I think that maybe meeting minutes that are very succinct and to the point, in plain English, of the most important points of the board meetings could be disseminated to the public. So that you can all learn about it, go on a website, read it, but also maybe have someone, like I would hope to be a liaison if we form that position within the board, that I would go and talk to the community and let them know what's going on and get their feedback. Let me see. What else did I have here? I mean, I'm not privy to all the information, but I do believe that some reports were not given to the board in a timely manner. So there wasn't information that was, oh sorry, my 30 minutes up and over, but that's my longest answer. Okay.
We'll go to something non-controversial, Common Core. Changes going forward with Park and Common Core. How do you, the board, plan to get feedback from teachers in a timely manner to be effective to respond to the needs?
Yeah, I think we've gotten a lot of feedback from the teachers. It's just that, these are mandated. If we want to have a change, we're going to have to appeal to a higher authority, that being the federal government and the state government. So, I think that the teachers have responded that they're finding it difficult to incorporate all these requirements, because there's a lot of them, and there's not that enough time in the day to do it all. So it's just creating a lot of undue stress on our teachers. And I think we could go back to the old way of teachers setting the curriculum along with the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, the educators of our district. But that's not the world we live in now. But hopefully there'll be some type of pushback where Common Core no longer is part of our world.
With changes going forward with Park and Common Core, how do you, the board, plan to get feedback from teachers in a timely manner to be effective to respond to the needs?
Okay. First of all, Park is not a federal program. Common Core is not a federal program. It's a state-level program. New Jersey has had state standards for years. The teachers in New Jersey have taught under those standards. And even with the Common Core standards, teachers still have the how to teach. The what comes from the standards, what to teach. The how comes from what their style is in teaching. They're not restricted from doing that. The good thing about the New Jersey Ask is no longer a test will be given. This is the new test. They were tested twice a year. They're tested in March, from 22nd to the 27th, they have a 20-day window, and from April 20th to May 22nd. Within those 20 days each time, they all have access to computers. The Common Core assessment is no longer the drill and kill that we're all used to, where you filled in the bubbles. Now you have to think. You have to think like, how would this really work? I just can't say, yeah, the answer is A and that's it. You have to think with this test. And that's the beauty of it. That's what business people are looking for. That's what colleges are looking for. The ability to think in and out of the box. As far as teacher assessment, it has nothing to do with PART. It has nothing to do with Common Core. The assessment comes from the Danielson plan. We use Danielson. There are about 4 in the country. Danielson does the assessments of teacher work. PART, the PART test, and Common Core work with the children. Danielson works for the teachers, and that's where the assessments come from. That's how the teachers get the feedback as to how well they're doing or how poorly they're doing. It works both ways. Yes, there is some stress there.
Okay, Common Core. Common Core is a mandate. Our governor was told that he did not have to, our state did not have to sign on to Common Core. But if we didn't, we wouldn't get funding for Race to the Top, and we wouldn't get waivers for No Child Left Behind, but we could do whatever we wanted to do. Well, that was huge, so the governor signed on. We were also in the state of New Jersey promised $38 million. Well, the reports are that Common Core, to run Common Core and to keep it implemented, it's upwards of $500 million. So I don't see how that's a great plan. Some of the things in Common Core are developmentally inappropriate, especially for children in the younger grades. They're asking first graders to do word problems in math when first graders can't even read yet. So the first graders are getting very stressed, the young children are getting very stressed. I've heard stories from parents about children vomiting, children being afraid to go to school, children hating school. And this is not what we want school to be for our children. We want our children to enjoy school. This is the foundation of their love of learning, and they should be loving school so that when they get older, they can just breeze right through. I have to differ with Pete here because according to Christie, the PARC exams will account for 10% of the teacher's evaluation this year, 20% next year, and 30% the year after that. And where it goes from there, I have no idea. And I believe that the test should be taught on the curriculum that the teachers are teaching in the classroom, so it should be a local-based assessment on our students.
All right, so as far as the PARC assessments, when I was a kid, when we were all in school, we all had to take standardized tests. Did we like them? No. Are they necessary? I guess so. I mean, how much information you really get from the ones that we used to take with the Scantron cards and all that other stuff is really debatable. PARC is the latest version of that standardized testing. There's got to be a way for, I guess, the powers that be to measure how we're doing. Is there ever going to be a perfect system? Absolutely not. You know, the Common Core, in my opinion, is what happens when people from somewhere, in this case, you know, Washington, wherever, legislate a fix to a problem that not everybody has. I mean, that's, to me, that's the upshot. If you have a poorly performing school district that really needs this rigor and really needs the teachers to have somebody standing right behind them and making sure they're doing the right thing, then you know what? It sort of makes sense. You know, that's not a problem that we have in Mahwah. We're a pretty high-performing district, and really, this is kind of a thorn in everybody's rear end here. And I guess we're lucky that way. As far as the feedback from teachers, you know, I think that the universal feedback is it's a lot of work. It's a big pain in the neck. But the other side to that, and the thing that our teachers have done a great job doing, of looking at this thing and say, okay, so we have it, it's here, it's not going away. Basically, this stinks. How do we make it great? And how do we do great things with it for our students? And I think our teachers have done an excellent job of really flipping, making lemons, lemonade out of lemons, so to speak. So again, going back to the people, I think that makes all the difference. And it is kind of a lousy situation for a district like Mahwah, but I think our teachers have done a great job with it.
Can I add one thing? Just one last thing, thank you. I think the way to get our teachers to let us know what's going on is that it would have to be done anonymously, because a lot of teachers are afraid to speak out. They believe that this is the way it is and they can't change it, and if they speak out, that their positions, their jobs are in jeopardy. So I think there would have to be an anonymous way for the teachers to discuss this.
So we have time for 2 or 1 more question? Your call, please. 2 more questions? Super. By the way, I did not fact check this question. Over the last several years, the Board of Education has realized budget surpluses of up to $2 million, which were transferred to a capital reserve account for facilities. During this time frame, property taxes were increased by the cap of 2%. Do you support the continuation of this practice? How do you think this surplus should be spent? Who went first last time?
John went first last time, so we're back up to you.
Okay, currently our capital reserve is $7.2 million. Okay, $7.2 million. Don't come back in the computer and say 12.6 or something like that. 7.2. It was the state education's way of allowing school districts to not get around, but to manipulate the 2% cap. Capital operating surplus cannot exceed 3%. Exceeds 3%, it's given back to the community. It sounds good. I'm a taxpayer in town. I'd like to get my money back. But by putting it in capital reserve, there is no top stop. There's no top stop. And you say, well, that's $7.2 million. I got to put a lot of things in. There are a lot of people in town that has wonderful ideas. And we'll listen to them. Any reasonable idea, the board will listen to your suggestions. I lost the train. Hold on. If they were to take and give you back, I think it was $200,000 was transferred this particular year. I'm not sure. I think it was $200,000 was transferred to capital reserve. If they didn't have that avenue to put money aside, for example, Wanting Schools just recently had a school district had a roof leak, $200,000. They didn't have the money. They had to go to bond, it was expensive, and put a referendum out to get money to the community. By putting in capital reserve, we maintain our 2% number the following year. Now, if we don't go down by $100,000, because that happens every year, you're going to get to a point of diminishing returns. You're not going to take and have a true 2%. You'll have a 2% at a lesser amount. So what has been done by the board, full knowledge of the board in public session, is totally within legalities and best fiscal suggestion.
Okay, I'm coming at this with, as I said, a new set of eyes. I'm not on the board. I don't really know the ins and outs, and I have no feelings one way or the other toward any of the members on the board, so I really don't have any allegiances. My understanding is that the money that was amassed, the community didn't really know had taken place. And then all of a sudden we understand that we have almost $8 million in the capital reserve account. And then we learned that we can't use any of the $8 million towards anything academic for the students. It has to be the facility itself, the infrastructure. I think that's a huge problem. We've got a lot, as we're talking, coming down the pipe with Common Core, and we can't use that money for the things that we don't even know how much it's going to cost to implement the Common Core and to keep the computers up to date, because they are totally out of date once you purchase them. Forget it, they're out of date. I don't believe the school should be a for-profit organization. In my mind, I'm thinking if there was enough money left over, that it could possibly have gone to some other part of the budget. If there was some budget that was lacking somehow, they could have used it in that part of the budget instead of putting it into a savings account. Now, I understand that we need to save money, and I think what I've been told that the school should have at least a $2 million reserve, just in case, for a rainy day fund. So the taxpayers, again, weren't aware of the savings, and I think that it was another issue of community not being privy to information or not being able to get the information. That's how I stand on that.
Give me a second, please, before it goes too far and we follow our field. The reason we were able to transfer $200,000 and the other years is because we have to, Ed DeTula, our business administrator, in preparing his budget, has to prepare for health insurance costs. He's told by the state, prepare for a budget with 18% increase for the next year. Comes in at 15%. So now he has this surplus. It's not because he's salting it away for a rainy day, it's because he's preparing for a rainy day in case they do come in at 18%. Right now, the state health program has been running in the red for 10 years. The hammer's going to fall sooner or later, and districts are going to have to pay ante-up. And we're just prepared for the rainy day. But it's not a case of skullduggery. It's a case of they were told to prepare for 18%, and it comes in at 12. No way to predict.
I'm confused.
I just want to make one statement. If the money is put into the capital reserve account, you cannot then spend it in the operating budget so that...
You know that. You were at the meeting where it was explained to you.
That's not savings, that's a one-way dead end.
Yeah. What's that?
You can put it in, but you can never take it out.
You can take it out for capital expenditures. A boiler goes, a roof goes.
Is insurance?
Insurance doesn't cover everything. A boiler breaking is not an insurance item.
Okay.
We're kind of breaking down here, aren't we?
It's not for operating expenses.
Mr. De Silva's turn.
So it's now Mr. De Silva's.
Sorry.
No, you keep going. All right, so there are a lot of different ways that money lands in capital reserve, and the example that I like to use is snow removal. If we budget, and I'm just pulling numbers here, I don't know what the actual numbers are off the top of my head, but let's say we budget $50,000 for snow removal during the year, and we have one snowstorm, and we use $10,000 of that $50,000. The other $40,000 has to go to capital reserve. Well,
No, it
okay,
doesn't.
let me rephrase. We put it in capital reserve.
You can put it in capital reserve, or you can reduce the next
Right.
year's taxes.
What we do
Okay,
is we
just
put it in
wanna-
capital reserve. And I'm going to get to what you just said. Right. So, the following year, you don't say, well, last year we only spent $10,000, so let's budget $10,000, and then we get whopped, and we end up having to take money from elsewhere. So earlier I talked about trying to stay under the 2% cap, being difficult as time goes on, as expenses, like Pete said, things like health insurance, things like teacher salaries, things that increase at a rate greater than 2%. Anytime the budget increases at a rate less than 2%, the day we hit tilt is that much closer. And that's basically why we put it into capital reserve, as opposed to taking $200,000 and putting it back into the budget would probably mean $1 or $2 for the average household. Not enough for anybody to ever even notice, but that $200,000 is, the budget grows as a percent of the previous budget. So every time it grows, like I said, less than 2%, our sort of quote-unquote day of reckoning is that much closer. So that's one of the reasons that we choose to put it there as opposed to into the following year budget. It's a choice.
My answer is going to be a very short answer, because the business administrator has already said at a public meeting that there's enough money in reserve currently. So going forward, the excess revenue should now be applied to the following year budget to lessen the tax burden on the taxpayer.
So this is our last question, and I think our candidates have done a great job to explain their positions. Round of Well, we do have one questioner that disagrees with me, and having been married for 28 years, I realize my opinion doesn't count.
That was happily married.
Happily married. So, I'm going to read the question as written. Considering the vanilla questions asked and answers given, in my opinion, not mine, no candidate has distinguished themselves from any other. Please tell me, why should I vote for you as opposed to the other candidates? What will you do that they won't? And what do you promise not to do that they probably will?
Oh my gosh.
I think you're first.
That's me? Oh my gosh. No. Okay.
So why should we vote for you?
Why should we vote for you? Why should you vote for me? You should vote for me because I care about the students and the children in our community, and also because I'm a new set of eyes. I am completely coming in with no preconceived notions, no hidden agenda. I'm just coming in as a clean slate. And I think that's why you should vote for me. I think it's time to let someone else take the reins and start working with the team and just get to understand also how our Board of Ed works. It'd be very interesting to learn how our Board of Ed works. And I know that probably there'll be a bit of a learning curve in the beginning, but I'm sure that I'm up for the job. I'm very intelligent. Ask my husband, sometimes so much so that we have huge arguments, but otherwise, I work well with others. I do play well with others. And I think that I think everybody here is very well qualified to be on the board. But I just ask you for your vote because I think that I can bring a new perspective to the Board of Education. Thank you.
So as I said before, I have a vested interest in what's going on here. My kids are in 2nd and 4th grade, so I have a long road to walk with in the school district here, and hope to be a part of that. Like I said earlier, I bring an open mind to it. I don't have an agenda. I'm here because, like everybody else here, I'm here because I care. You know, like I said, I want to do my part to make sure that our students are as well prepared as I was. And anywhere that I need to be to do that, that's what I'm here to do. And as far as what I'll do that anybody else here won't do, you know, Kim mentioned the learning curve. We have no idea. I'm here almost 2 years now, and I mean there's still stuff that I'm learning and trying to figure out and scratching my head, and you know, you can kind of take everything that you know about common sense and the way things work, and when you throw Trenton and Washington into the mix, it all goes out the window. So it is a constant learning curve, and what we can do, can't do, and shouldn't do. It's definitely an interesting journey. I am a little ways down that road, so I'm on that learning curve, and hopefully I'll be permitted to continue along that journey.
If you elect me to the Board of Education, I'm not going alone. I'm bringing the whole community with me. Because all of us together, collectively, we can do some really great things. I mentioned earlier about a community advisory committee. I think that would be a big asset to the district. And we have a model for doing that. And it's right here in our own district. It's the HSOs. If you ever see how the HSOs operate, very well-run organizations for all of our schools. They do a lot of good stuff. They do many events throughout the whole year. And how is it that they're able to accomplish all this? They do it by subcommittees. They have an executive committee that runs the HSO, and then they have these little subcommittees that are individualized, so that one school may have like 15 subcommittees, and that's how they're able to do so much work and do such good events for our district. And you know, our community's got a lot of talent. I don't think that's something that we should ignore. We should bring the community into our district and use their talent. Getting back to the HSOs, the thing that I like best about the HSOs is all-inclusive. Nobody gets turned away. Anybody who wants to participate, they take on all comers. And that's what I'm looking for the Board of Ed.
I want to clarify one point. Whenever an account is weak, the business administrator through the Board of Education does budget transfers. The last couple of meetings, if you had been in attendance, you would see line items for budget transfers from one line item to another, so that no one is short of funds. No one's ever been turned away because there are no funds available. We do our best to keep everyone running smoothly. As far as why I want to be on the board, because I still have a fire in my belly. I really love this district. I love this community. I've been in it for over 43 years. I go out of my way to go to meetings in other places to see how they're doing things and what we're doing that's better or worse than other districts. I know for a neighboring district here, the board's completely dysfunctional. They fight, literally fight at every meeting. We don't do that. We work together as a team because we know our common goal are the kids of this school district. There's no egos involved here. There's no baggage involved here. I never got on the board because I had a piece of baggage. I was either special ed or sports or this or that. It was because I cared for the kids and I still care for those kids. I go to Trenton on numerous occasions, 166 miles round trip to make sure I can get things back for our district by attending there. And I want to continue doing that for you. I want to continue stuff like that. I want to allow us to continue to grow. I'm very proud of what we've done, and I want it to continue. So that's why I want to run for the board. There's no salary waiting for me. They don't owe me one heck of a paycheck. But I do it for the love of the community. And I'll continue to do that for you. What's that saying?
Okay, so each candidate gets a brief summary. And what since Mr. Sugarich is with?
Reverse order.
I'm going to reverse order it.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much my summary. I already gave it. I want to.
Great question for summary, really. It was perfect.
I want to bring the community into the decision-making process, and I think I've outlined the steps to do that. So I'm hoping that you'll elect me, and that we can all work together to make this school system even better than it is. But it's already a great school system, but there's always room for improvement.
Kind of the same as John, I sort of summed it up on the last go-around. The thing to keep in mind about me, I guess, I am the one with the longest term vested interest in what's happening here. My kids are the youngest, I think, right here.
No, I got a kindergarten.
Never mind. We've all got kids in the district. Mine are some of the youngest. I'm here for the long haul. Again, no agenda. I'm here because, you know what, somebody's got to do it, and I choose to participate.
So I did prepare a closing statement that I'd like to read so that you can get some information about who I am and where I've come from. So over the past several years, I've become more proactive in the matters of education. I've traveled to Trenton in order to testify at hearings before the New Jersey State Board of Education, the New Jersey Senate Education Committee, the New Jersey Assembly Education Committee, and the Bergen County Board of Chosen Freeholders. And I most recently took part in a live streaming event presented by the New Jersey School Choice and Education Reform Alliance. My son also testified before the New Jersey State Board of Education, the Bergen County Board of Chosen Freeholders, and shared his opinions and concerns before our very own Mahwah Board of Education. And not to be partial, but I do believe my son exemplifies the excellent education opportunities available through our very own Mahwah school system and our wonderful teachers. And I believe my experiential life lessons have helped prepare me to embark on this chapter of my life as a member of the Mahwah School Board of Education.